You're listening to Food Psych, a podcast about nutrition, eating disorders, and body image. I'm your host, Christy Harrison, and I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist and certified intuitive eating counselor, specializing in health at every size. Join me as I talk with interesting people from all walks of life about their relationships to food.
I remember I was teething, little gums bleeding, cried every evening, it was all about eating. When I became a teen, it was all about beef, and now I'm ready for the world, trying to sink my teeth in.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 66. Today I'm talking with the fabulous Akirah Robinson, who is a therapist specializing in relationship issues, and she has her own journey toward intuitive eating that she has chronicled in personal essays that I came across online and just really loved her writing and wanted to talk to her for the podcast. She has an awesome story of what led her to start dieting in childhood, why she decided to try intuitive eating, and how her journey is going so far. And she's also married to a chef, so we talk about what it's like to be married to a chef and to sort of have your own relationship with food evolving as you're living with someone who makes their living preparing food for other people. She's a really fabulous guest, and I can't wait for you guys to hear from her in just a moment. But first, I want to let you know about a couple of great resources to help you improve your relationship with food. The first is my free quiz to assess whether you have a healthy relationship with food, and I'll send you your results via email, along with more than a dozen individualized tips to help you make peace with food wherever you may fall on the spectrum right now. You can take the quiz and get your results today at christyharrison.com/quiz. That's christyharrison.com/quiz. The second thing I want to mention is the Food Psych Premium online community. This is a great resource because members get a lot of excellent exclusive content, like our Ask Food Psych bonus episodes, where listeners can ask questions about anything they hear on the podcast, from intuitive eating and health at every size to eating disorder recovery and my own recovery story. So it's all up for grabs in the Ask Food Psych episodes, but only premium members get to hear the answers. Members also get exclusive access to the first season of Food Psych, which is now no longer available anywhere else. That season has interviews with some amazing people like comedians Mark Maron and Jackie Cation, actress Aisha Tyler, and a bunch of other awesome people like chefs and food writers and other actors and comedians and lots more. We'll also be doing periodic coaching calls exclusively for premium members. So to learn more and join the community, visit christyharrison.com/premium. That's christyharrison.com/premium. If you like the podcast and want to help us reach more people who need to hear this body positive message, you can leave us a great review on iTunes. Just open up iTunes on your computer, type in Food Psych to the search bar, click the result that comes up under podcasts, and then go to the ratings and reviews tab. So you can leave your rating and review there, sharing what you love about the podcast, and we'd be so grateful if you help spread the word. Now, without any further ado, let's go talk to Akirah Robinson. I spoke with her via Skype from her home in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So tell me about your relationship with food growing up.
Oh, I loved food growing up. Food was a good friend of mine growing up. So my mom's side of the family is from the South, and food is really, really important to my mother's side of the family. And so I grew up eating just amazing food since I was a little girl. And I really liked eating all of it, especially when we went to go visit my grandmother in the summers and, for Christmas or whatever. So, I definitely started to seek the comfort of food at an earlier age. And I was never really discouraged to not eat as much as I wanted to. One of my grandmother's favorite phrases was, "Eat your stomach full." And she just always wanted to feed us. She was a lunch lady, actually. So she just loved feeding us as kids. And I started, getting a little heavier, one summer after visiting her for the entire summer. I came home and, I was a little bigger, and, my mom was like, "Oh my goodness." And I think that's kind of where it started, where I realized, oh my gosh, food is awesome, which which it is. So, yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's interesting? Because it sounds like you were maybe encouraged to eat past like what you would have normally eaten, or past the comfortable point of fullness to kind of like extreme fullness, would you say? Or was it more just like you were turning to food as like an emotional kind of soothing mechanism? Or
I don't know if it was necessarily like, eat until you're like incredibly stuffed. There was really no talk of that, or, what is satisfaction. But I was definitely encouraged to clear my plate. I have memories of when I was a kid in my home having to eat everything on my plate. And my parents would actually put the dessert in front of me while I'm trying to eat the vegetables. And I was like maybe 4 or 5. And so there would be a bowl of ice cream melting in front of me and my vegetables. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to eat this, but I really want the ice cream.
Right.
So I learned, like, we do not waste food. There are kids, starving in other countries. They would be happy to have that food. And so you need to eat, everything on your plate.
Wow. Yeah. So that kind of classic sort of reason to get kids to finish their food.
Yep.
With that added, it's so interesting that you had the visual cue too of the dessert right there.
Yes, it's really cruel. Like,
yeah, definitely.
But I understand what my parents were doing. I don't necessarily agree with it as an adult myself, but I think that they just wanted us to be grateful for what we had, and felt that was a good way to express that gratitude.
Totally. Yeah. And that was such a thing back then. I think now we're sort of understanding the repercussions of making kids feel guilty in that way. But I remember, like, as a kid too, like, in the 80s and 90s, like seeing those commercials on TV where it was like people are starving in, Ethiopia or whatever other parts of the world. I feel like they really harped on Ethiopia for a while, but like that was like, the refrain for a little while at my dinner table too. I think it didn't really stick, but like I definitely remember a few times that being invoked as a reason for me to finish my plate. And I know a lot of people who kind of fell into that as well.
Yep.
Well, so, and then you said like your mom made a comment when you came back from your grandma's that summer, like, "Ooh, you've put on some weight," or whatever. Did that make you feel like you had to start controlling things, or like, changing your body, or did it not really take root right then?
No, it didn't. And it actually was like a funny thing. Like, my brother and I both, we would go visit my grandmother for a summer, and we would come back heavier. Mm-hmm. And it was never really, because being a Black woman, like, that being larger was not the worst thing in the world. So, we just kind of ate and kind of laughed whenever we gained weight. And my brother, he has a different build than I do. So he's really tall. And so he was able to kind of lose whatever, weight through activity or whatever. And for me, like, I'm a bigger woman. And so even as a kid, like, the weight kind of stuck to me. But it wasn't anything that I ever felt ashamed about until middle school. Maybe like 5th grade, 5th grade, I moved from a very culturally diverse area to a predominantly white area. And so the differences in, obviously my skin, my hair, even my body build were a lot more drastic to me, or a lot more noticeable to me at that time. And, so I had a lot of skinnier white kids making fun of me. And that was when I started to feel like I was different, and that, the way I looked was wrong. And, but I didn't really start doing anything about that until high school.
So it kind of was just building that sense of like not belonging, or something being wrong with your body or different about your body. Yeah.
I mean, in my family, it wasn't really an issue, except for whenever I had to go clothes shopping, because it was really difficult to find clothes to fit. And so my mom, would maybe make comments then. And there would be some times whenever my mom would say, like, "You're getting, kind of big," but my parents are not the skinniest people. So it was never something in my family where, like, I felt shamed about my weight. I more so got that from schoolmates and also a doctor that I saw. She definitely shamed me anytime I had a physical. So
yeah, was that one of the things that set it off then?
Oh, yes.
This idea
Yes.
of dieting. Yeah. Tell me more about that. What did she say?
So I don't remember exactly. I think I was 15 at the time. And, this was maybe my second or third appointment with her where she just was like, you need to lose weight. You need to lose weight. You need to lose weight. And I didn't take it seriously. I'm just like, whatever. But there was a point where I just was tired of looking different. I was tired of not having, boys interested in me. And so I really took her words to heart. And, she tried to put me on a diet and I followed it. And then as time progressed, things got a little out of control. And, I was definitely not following it, the way that she had advised. I was eating less and working out more. But so it kind of started with her. I can remember the appointment very specifically. I wanted to be on like the basketball team or something, and I needed to have her fill out some paperwork to say that I could do that. She just was like, "You need to lose weight," and it's so funny to me because I'm like trying to join a basketball team and like trying to take care of my body, and you would think that she would praise that, but she was just like, you're a really heavy person and you need to not be, who you are. It felt awful. It felt absolutely awful to the point where my mom was really upset too. Like, I think that she saw the way that impacted me.
Yeah. So you had like an ally at home, it sounds like, to push back a little bit against that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's so unfortunate. And like, I feel like that has just gotten worse now that, the whole like quote unquote obesity epidemic has become such a public health priority. It's like doctors will ignore people doing things that are actually good for their health in favor of saying like, well, your body looks bad though. It looks too big, like this judgment from the medical profession is really intense, and like it completely ignores that what they're supposed to actually be caring about, which is health, which is like, yeah, like, cool, you're playing basketball, great, like, get some movement, take care of your body, and then whatever it looks like, it's going to be healthy on the inside.
Yeah.
Ugh, that sucks. So,
yeah.
And it sounds like it spiraled into something like, disordered eating or eating disorder. I don't know how far it really went with you, but like the sort of going lower than the diet or exercising more, like how did that start to manifest?
Yeah. So, and I don't want to get into too many specifics, but I definitely I was logging food. I was definitely not eating nearly the amount that I should have been eating. It was very unhealthy. I was working out at least once a day, sometimes twice a day, going for runs, working on the workout bike, things like that. And I also had a friend, a really good friend of mine who we've never really like openly talked about this, but I'm pretty sure like she was having some issues too. So like we kind of latched on to each other in a way and just kind of encouraged each other, to be unhealthy in these ways. And my weight loss was significant. So I was getting a lot of positive feedback from folks. And so that kind of was an encouragement to me to keep going. And so I continued with it until about college, actually. I kind of laid off all of it when I started college. But high school, sophomore, junior, senior year, I really started watching everything that I was eating pretty meticulously.
Yeah. And it's so unfortunate that people praise that, they see whatever outer manifestation of this like hyper control as like a good thing or something to be praised and don't understand what's going on inside your head.
Exactly.
Because I'm sure that period of time was really exhausting, right? Like, having to fight against all those thoughts all day long is never fun.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah, I definitely had a similar moment of like starting a diet and then going, like having it spiral into something else and like actually getting good feedback for that, like praise and not being called out for what I was actually doing to my body. So it was, really detrimental, because it's just like, I think the whole quote unquote thin ideal is so detrimental to people in that way, because it just encourages really disordered behaviors that, ultimately catch up with you. But it's like the praise kind of fuels the fire, keeps it going. And then, so you said in college, though, you kind of laid off. Was there anything in particular that made you decide to do that? Or like, how did that happen?
I think at that point I was content with the amount I had lost, and I was just so overwhelmed by all the other change in my life going on at that time. So it just wasn't a priority for me. But I still really struggled with my body, because I had 2 roommates, and one in particular, like, she looked exactly like, the young women that I went to high school with. And she was very confident in her body. And so she would walk around, naked sometimes, and just like, and it wasn't anything to like, flaunt anything or to make anyone feel bad. She just was a really confident person. And so, me being a larger Black woman, I would look at her and be like, oh my gosh, I will never look like that. And she would get a lot of attention from men, and it was a really hard year for me in that regard. But I didn't really seek out, controlling my food intake or anything like that. I was exercising a lot, but I actually really liked the food at college. So I just was like, I'm going to eat. But I do remember experiencing a lot of shame at that time, because I just really constantly was comparing myself to her and other, young women that I went to school with. So
yeah, that's really, it's interesting how, sometimes people's body confidence, it's great for her that she was confident in her body like that, but the sort of fallout of it when you don't look like that can be really detrimental, as opposed to like, if this were a culture, if you were in a culture in college where it was like all bodies were celebrated and body diversity was, an acceptable thing, then you could have been like, great, and here's my body and I'm confident in that. But it wasn't that way. There's like this hierarchy instead.
Yep,
of
exactly
what a valuable body looked like. Gosh. But I mean, also super cool that you made that decision about your food in the face of that, and you kind of were able to sit with the discomfort of comparing yourself to her and not making changes in your food,
Yeah.
Because that's a huge step in recovery. And that, like, it's interesting how, people have these winding paths to like finding body acceptance and finding intuitive eating. And I work with a lot of people who are like, coming to me to do this. So they're kind of in this like systematized process, or sometimes they go to a treatment center or they just work with me outpatient or whatever it is. But, kind of like helping shepherd people through the process is a lot of what you just like stumbled into, which is just like, okay, well, you have to eat because, food is great. And also, you need it to be healthy, and like, you can't restrict your food, and that's going to cause a lot more problems. But you have to sort of go through this uncomfortable phase of accepting like other people might look different, and other people might be doing different things with food and like sort of messed up stuff that you are no longer doing. And you have to just accept like, this is me, that's them, moving forward,
Yeah. And in college, I mean, food was such an integral part of community building. So we would, go to dinner every night, and it would be a large group of people, and we would bond over that. Or we would go to a restaurant on the weekend and go to brunch on Sunday after church. And like, it was such a big part of college life that it kind of felt, impossible to restrict or avoid, because I would have lost out on my social life, and people would have known. Like in high school, it was fairly easy for me to hide what I was doing, because, both my parents worked, and, I was preparing a lot of my meals anyway. But in college, like, everybody's hanging out and everybody's living together, and they know what your schedule looks like. And so it was just difficult for me to do that anyway, which I think was a blessing, that I couldn't hide and not ever eat, in front of folks because they knew they were always inviting me out to hang out with them. So
totally. Yeah, it was like a de facto meal support kind of thing.
Yep. Exactly.
That's very cool. And did people have pretty good relationships with food in that community you were in, or?
I think so. I think a lot of what I would see was unhealthy relationships with exercise.
Yeah.
That was more of what I would see than the food side. I think, my friends and I, we would eat what we wanted. People didn't really talk about restriction or anything like that. But exercise was like a big thing. People exercising, have to exercise every single day, or, have to exercise for this amount of time. It was definitely something that I noticed in college.
Right. So the disordered kind of relationship with your body just morphed into more on the exercise side.
Yeah.
Or for, everyone else too. But that's interesting because it sounds like in high school, for you, it was like both the food and the exercise. So you kind of dropped control, trying to control one, which is at least a positive step.
Yep.
Yeah. And then, so from there, how did you start to like reclaim your relationship with your body? And, I'm assuming the exercise, the sort of over-exercise and compulsive exercise piece still caused some issues, right? Like that definitely sounds like it was sort of got in the way of having an authentic relationship with movement and exercise. So.
Yeah. So I actually, in my junior year of college, I actually got sick and didn't really know what was going on. And so I didn't have much of an appetite. And so my relationship with my body and food was very complicated at that point. But upon graduating, I ended up dating this guy who really just liked my body as is. In fact, I had lost some weight because of that illness. And as I was starting to get better and was starting to have more of an appetite, he kind of made it clear to me like that he would prefer me to have gained some weight. So in some ways he would like try to fatten me up, which was kind of odd and unexpected for me. And so throughout that relationship, my relationship with food and my body really was just on the back burner for me. It wasn't something that I struggled with that much because I had this guy who was really just, complimentary of the way that I looked, and I just didn't feel a lot of insecurity in that regard. When we broke up, however, I started to feel a lot more of that insecurity again. And, I remember I was at work. And I used to work with kids with special needs. And one of them like pointed at my stomach and asked me if I was pregnant.
Oh, no.
And she did it. And, at that point, I was already going through this breakup and, just was kind of feeling a little rotten. So that started like another wave of dieting and exercising. I trained for a 10K, which was a great accomplishment for me. But I was definitely in this like counting calorie phase, really just restricting my food. And I did lose some weight at that point, but I wouldn't even say that I had, a healthy relationship with my body at that point either. So yeah, it kind of has been off and on for me until more recently, after getting married, graduating from grad school, and kind of just like settling down a little bit and realizing that this whole up and down thing with my body could go on forever if I let it. And I think at around that point, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, is when I learned about intuitive eating and just kind of felt such relief of just, wow, maybe I don't have to do this anymore. Maybe I can just be content and take care of my body the best way that I can. And, some months I'll be great at it, and other months, stress will pop up and I'll really struggle, but it's all a part of the journey. I can be okay with myself. And so that's been a more recent thing for me, is with this discovery of intuitive eating and just wanting to never diet again. I don't ever want to do that to myself again. And it's been such a relief to realize that I don't have to.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah.
How were you introduced to intuitive eating?
Goodness, I feel like, how was I introduced? I feel like I saw a TED Talk. I forget the name of the woman.
Oh, yeah.
But that was like my first introduction. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this is a thing. And so shortly after that, I ordered the book and I read the book. And that was just revolutionary for me. I just was like, oh my goodness, like I've been a part of I've been buying into the diet industry thinking that it was going to solve this problem. Meanwhile, like there really is no problem. And me being, a user, a consumer of the diet industry is only feeding into a problem that isn't really there. Like my body's not a problem, And so that I remember, I think it's like the first 3 chapters of that book where they just kind of like slam the diet industry. And that for me was just like, I finally got it. Like this does not work. Like my weight has been up and down, up and down, up and down. It's because it doesn't work. Yeah. Just really being able to give myself permission to not engage in that, because I had even like tried all kinds of like paleo and like all those different things. So it was like, I'm not going to count calories anymore. Like I'm not doing the MyFitnessPal stuff. I'm not doing the Weight Watcher stuff, but it was still a way to control and restrict that didn't always feel good to me. Like some days, I really just wanted some cheese and, and like, I just would tell myself, no, you can't have cheese. You're doing paleo. Like you can't do that. And so just kind of reading that book and realizing like, oh my goodness, like I could eat anything,
Totally.
And my body is a lot wiser than I give it credit for.
Yes.
It just was such a relief.
That's amazing. Yeah. 'Cause it sounds like you'd like gone through the ringer with all the different diets the way so many people have. It's like, if it's not one thing, it's another. I'm curious how, like, when you were in those diet, in that diet phase, how it impacted your relationship with like your family around food. 'Cause it sounds like they had such a rich food culture that you probably weren't able to participate in at that point. Right.
Yeah. So what I remember the most, my parents are really supportive people. So like what I remember the most is like sometimes I would make like self-deprecating comments and, my parents would be like, shut up, you're fine. Like you look fine. You look great. Stop it. And of course I didn't believe them, but and I remember like there would be times when I would like kind of shame my mom, like stop putting so much butter in things or, I can't eat that. I'm just going to order a salad. And, they never really countered back with anything. They just would be like, okay, whatever, eat what you want to eat. Which is such a like, intuitive perspective, right? Like eat what you want to eat, right?
Totally.
But I never really got a lot of backlash from them. They were fairly supportive. And, when I was younger, like I was fairly large and, I did struggle a lot, physically, like there were some issues. So I don't think that it was necessarily a bad thing for me to want to do what I could for my health. And so my parents saw that and they were encouraging of that. But I think after a certain point when I lost, however much, like they were kind of like, all right, like you look fine, you feel better, you're active, you move your body, you can stop now. Like you can stop treating yourself badly. You can stop talking about yourself in such a way. When does this end? You know what I mean? Which I think is kind of, that's a fairly healthy critique to have. But it was never really direct, so it was kind of just like in passing, they would say those things to me and it would go in one ear and out the other. And, I would just eat my salad and be done with it. So, but regardless, they were fairly supportive regardless. So,
yeah, that's cool. But it sounds like it took you away from being able to eat the foods you wanted also. So that's.
Yeah. And enjoy my time with them. So.
Yeah, not be thinking about or fighting over like, well, I'm going to eat this and you guys will eat that and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Having special foods. Yeah, I know. It's so interesting, the whole thing of like because it sounds like for you and for so many people, I know I had this too, like it goes deeper than just wanting to like quote get healthier, you know, like it becomes about the aesthetics and then what you think the aesthetics are going to get you, like what you think is going to sort of await you once you change your body to a certain degree or to some ideal you have in your head, right?
Yeah.
And especially around, I mean, I know for me, like some of the biggest triggers for my own disordered eating were like breakups or getting together with someone where I was like comparing against like other people he had dated or stuff like that, you know, where I was just like in this really unhealthy relationship with like what I thought a guy wanted from me, which might or might not have been the case, but like, you know, just sort of thinking like if I transform myself in this way, if I'm, you know, thin enough, he will love me and we'll have a perfect relationship or whatever it was, you know.
Yeah.
It was about like getting love. It wasn't about, you know, because like we all deserve love and connection, whatever our size, but it's so interesting how that lie is sold to us like, well, no, you have to be a certain size to get love, you know. Ugh. So yeah, so it sounds like it really triggered that when you had that breakup in college.
Definitely. Yeah.
And then sort of another aspect of that is that you're now married to a chef. And I'm so curious to hear like how that has influenced your relationship with food and like, you know, if part of your intuitive eating journey was sort of brought forward by being in this relationship with him.
So I feel like I definitely felt a lot of guilt and shame, you know, because, you know, my husband loves food, loves eating, as he should.
Sure.
And in the beginning of our, you know, relationship and marriage, I would always feel like, oh, I should eat that, or, you know, why are we eating this? And it just was really difficult to keep up because, you know, for him, the world was always his oyster in terms of food. Like he will eat anything. So after learning about intuitive eating, it's been, you know, a big weight off of my shoulder of just like, I can eat whatever. Like if we're going to get barbecue, I can eat barbecue. If we're going to get pizza, like I can have pizza. And I don't have to beat myself up over that. And so there's just been a lot more freedom. And my ability to kind of see his perspective, I still really struggle. So I don't ever want anyone to think that like, you know, I just eat whatever and things are great. But
yeah, you don't have any feelings about it or whatever.
No, I definitely still struggle. But, you know, I'm definitely also out of that phase of, you know, oh, well, is that going to be paleo friendly, or I need to be able to count how many calories in my little app, you know, because that's what we would have to do. Like, that's how it was. And I think for him, it was always confusing because like there would be some seasons where I was really, really strict about things. And in other seasons where, you know, I would just eat whatever. And so there was a lot more freedom for him as well, where I just would just eat with him and it wasn't a big deal. But
was
like
it sort of you going through the like diet and then backlash against the diet each time? Yeah. That makes sense.
And so that was probably very confusing for him of just like, oh my gosh. So at least at this point, like I still have my struggles, but and I'm a pickier eater just in general. But in terms of like weight loss and, you know, things like that, I don't ever put that like restriction on him, like we can't go to this restaurant because, you know, X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, so you're not pursuing that anymore.
No, I don't have apps on my phone and you know, doing all of that stuff, asking him to cook me certain things and don't put that in it or don't put that in it.
Right.
Can be a lot more just open about where we go and what we eat, which I think has been helpful for us. I did contemplate, you know, a vegan diet, you know, more recently, but after some discernment, I was like, nope, I don't think that's going to be good for me in terms of how that would trigger my disordered eating history. So yeah, I was able to kind of make that decision quickly, but
That sounds like really good awareness of, and good attunement to your intuition, right? Like,
Yeah.
your intuition was probably like, nope, not so much.
Yeah. I was like, this seems interesting. It seems aligned with a lot of my values, and just like health wise, I have some stuff going on, but I just was like, I don't know if the whole restriction thing is gonna go over too well. So I need to maybe not do that.
Right. That's excellent. I love that. And I think that's such a great place to get to, and something that, like, I think is so much more available with intuitive eating, because once you're kind of in touch with your intuition around food, you can also be in touch with your intuition a little more around like what might be triggering, or, really like all areas of life. But I think it's really valuable to have that instinct.
Yep.
Yeah. And I feel the same way too. I've had definitely moments, in my past where I was like, not quite as, I feel like now it's all put to rest basically, but like, and also because I work in this field, I hear so many stories, and I see so many people who are struggling with the same things. And like, I can sort of appreciate like being on the other side of that, and how it doesn't work for anyone, to be pursuing these different like weight loss methods or whatever. But I think, definitely had like some moments where I was like, oh, should I be vegan? Should I be vegetarian? And there was a little bit of a like, there was the health factor, like thinking it was healthier and maybe that it would help me deal with some health issues I had. And then there was like the environmental or animal rights factor too, and sort of thinking like it would be nice to be lower footprint, like have a lower, environmental footprint, and a lower toll on animal life. And I do really value animals and stuff, so that I considered it, and I definitely like, toyed with it in both the case of veganism and vegetarianism. But then it was the same thing where I was like, if I really go down this road, if I start being the person who's like, I don't eat this, I don't eat that, that's really going to take me back to a place that I don't want to be, like that I've worked really hard to get away from, and I think it's just never going to work for me to be strict about anything. So yeah, so for like 7 years or something, I haven't had any dietary restrictions whatsoever. And it's very liberating. It's really, really cool to see, because, I still can have those values, and I don't have to like eat meat every single meal or whatever. I can like have, a taste and appreciation for like a vegan, dessert or a whatever. I've gone to like some restaurants that are vegan and vegetarian that are delicious, and that's great. That can be part of my repertoire, but it doesn't have to be all of it,
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it gets so tied up too with, because there might be those sort of animal rights or whatever, sort of like health concerns or whatever it is, but it's so easy for that to tip over into like, oh, but I'm also going to lose weight. I'm also going to change my body. Or in the case of the health concerns too, it's like this sense of like, oh, but I'll be cleaner. I'll be more pure. I'll be more, more clean, like whatever, the clean eating thing, which I think has so many flaws in terms of, moralizing about food.
That's exactly what I noticed in myself, was just like, oh, well, if I become vegan, then I'll lose some weight too. And right when I started like really thinking about that, I was like, no,
right.
no, you did that 15 years ago. Like, let's not do that. So,
yeah, let's not go back to the thing that didn't work and drove me crazy. Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, that's such a beautiful awareness to have, because I think sometimes like when we're in denial or so locked into the disordered eating place, it's hard to even recognize like, oh, that's an eating disordered thought, or that's a disordered thought or an unhealthy thought to be having. Like, let me not follow it. Let me not like do what it's telling me to do, so you have a little bit of separation from it, and you can like decide whether to follow it or not.
Exactly.
That's awesome. So yeah, where do you feel you are now with your intuitive eating journey? Like, what are you still working on or exploring further?
Yeah, so for me, I think my two main things are, moving my body on a consistent basis and finding ways that I really enjoy doing that, ways I like to do that. So I'm just kind of figuring out, like, do I still actually like running, or something that I used to do? And when was it? Last summer, I think it was, like, or maybe it was the summer before that, I was training for another 10K, and had already signed up for it and was doing what I could to train and prepare. I struggled because I had one of those like trackers on my phone, how many miles and calories and all that. And it was really, really hard for me, to the point where like I kind of just stepped away from the training and just, did what I could on the day of the race, because it was messing with me. So I think like right now, it's just really hard for me to find the type of exercise that I enjoy, without thinking too much about, the calorie burning benefits or, just all that stuff. Am I sweating enough? Did I work out long enough? That's the stuff that I'm really kind of working through right now, and finding ways that I can move my body that feel good to me, and I'm able to be present, and I'm thinking so much about, like I probably burned, whatever. That's something that I'm really working on. I've been hiking, like walking. I think I do enjoy jogging. So that's something that I'm trying to experiment with. Yoga is something that I've been kind of like into off and on. So it's like one big struggle for me. And then also just finding ways to deal with my stress that don't involve, just eating and just mindlessly eating. Because I realize for me, that's like the big thing that I do, or have done in the past. It's just like, if I feel a little bit of discomfort, or if I feel stressed, or like if emotions are high, that's when I'm reaching for the potato chips, or whatever the case might be. And it's fine to eat potato chips. I love potato chips, but I also want to be in a place where, I'm making conscious decisions about what I'm eating, and, not eating when I'm not hungry. So those are probably the two things that I'm really processing and working on.
Yeah, those are such big challenges. And I think the exercise piece for a lot of people, and for me too, was like one of the last frontiers. Because it's so like, I feel like the way that exercise is sort of portrayed to us from such a young age is like, work it off, or do this to make your body look a certain way, and I've said on the podcast, like, I feel like it's sort of the earliest installation of like this idea that you can change your body and make it look different through like effort of your own. It's like, get a big muscle, make your arms big, or whatever it is. Like, you kind of, there's just like this long inculcation that we all have with exercise as being like a tool for body change. So it makes sense that it would be like one of the hardest things to let go of too, in this process of learning to relate to your body intuitively, because there really is no like education around intuitive movement. I think like learning to tune into your body's desire for movement, just as you can tune into your hunger and fullness, is like totally possible and totally useful. But there's not a lot of like guidance around that in this fitness obsessed world we live in, because I think the diet industry is like overlaps with the fitness industry, but definitely the fitness industry, I think for the most part, is like very much operates within that diet mentality of like, do this to work off that, or do this to make your body look, in line with the thin ideal, or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I know, like, for me, like, I know that I have gained some weight. I'm not sure how much, because I don't weigh myself. But even just trying to, like, deal with that, and, seeing that clothes are fitting me a little differently, and I'm getting older, and just all of those feelings and thoughts have been kind of difficult to sort through. But I'm proud of myself, because I'm doing so from a place of like letting myself sit with the discomfort, rather than just like, let me just run and that'll fix it. Like, I'm able to actually get to some of the underlying issues and work toward acceptance, rather than just, doing whatever I need to do to lose a certain number of whatever and call it a day. So I'm proud of myself for that, because I know what my tendency would have been in the past, and, I'm just not going there. It's not going to be it's not going to work. It won't work. Stepping on a scale, I'll have a number and then what? You know, it just isn't going to be beneficial for me. So really just trying to work on some of the root stuff that's going on with me right now, and realizing like I really love my body. Like, I know that there are a lot of people out there who like, I never thought that I could look the way that I look right now and still have love and respect for my body. Because, you know, when I was 15 dieting, you know, I always told myself, like, you will never get back to a certain weight. Like, when you're older and you are pregnant, you're going to lose all your weight as soon as possible. Like, you're never going to put yourself back into that position ever again. That was like what I would tell myself. And so it's just so funny to be 31 now, and, you know, who knows how much I weigh. I have no clue, but I know that I'm not as thin as I was before. And, you know, I still, like, I don't have there's not a part of me that hates. I love who I am. I love the way I look. Like, I love the clothes that I've bought myself, and like, I buy dresses that make me feel good about myself, and I love my hair. And so it's just such an amazing thing, like, to realize, like, I'm actually getting at some root issues, and I'm not just addressing symptoms here. And I truly do care about myself. I care about my body, and I love the way I look, and I don't think I deserve shame anymore. It's just really, it's amazing to me to be in that place.
That's so amazing. Yeah, such a beautiful transition. So you're a therapist too, right?
I am, yes.
Yeah. Did you have to like do your own therapy as part of your training, or did you go into therapy to work on some of these issues, or how did that play into it?
I think it should be a requirement.
Yeah.
I think that therapists probably should go to therapy. I personally do go to therapy.
Yeah, me too. I love it.
Yeah. And so I am working on a lot of other issues that I think connect with my food and body stuff. And it certainly has come up a lot. So, but this is something that I really want to address more, because I feel like as I've worked on other things and I'm like kind of in a healthier place in regards to other areas of my life, I find myself in this place of just like, okay, so I love and accept myself as I am. However, you know, I want to behave in a way that illustrates that, because I think that's sometimes where I struggle the most. And so I think, you know, going to therapy and talking about that is going to be helpful to me. So that's been kind of a newer thing. And honestly, like, it's just been hard finding a clinician who knows what intuitive eating is. So, you know, a lot of times when I've talked to therapists about it, like, I've had to explain it. And, you know, that takes like 15 minutes of the session.
Right.
And of course, they're just like, oh, that's awesome. But in terms of like really being able to kind of like guide me or, you know, reflect back to me some things, that's been a struggle for me. I haven't had a lot of clinicians that I've worked with, or just like, you know, peers that are aware of what this is.
Yeah, I think it does take some like specialization sometimes to find that. And then also, I mean, what I've found too is that like, because I never went to a therapist specifically for the eating issues either. I kind of went into therapy because of like massive anxiety, which was, you know, from a lot of the underlying issues and also sort of exacerbated by my eating issues and stuff. So that's what drove me in the door. And I was lucky to find a therapist in New York, like the first therapist I really clicked with in New York, who did so much great work with me on the underlying issues and came from a place of real self-compassion, introduced me to like meditation and, you know, the concept of self-compassion and self-care. Like that was so huge for dealing with those underlying issues too. But like then to go the next step and like do the work on the food issues, like I think I kind of mostly did it on my own, like through the intuitive eating book and through you know, listening to podcasts and watching videos and just, you know, reading and immersing myself in the world of body positivity, which I did more and more as time went on, and like as I also started to specialize in this area in my practice and my work. But I've since discovered that like a lot of therapists and even a lot of dietitians like don't really understand intuitive eating and its function and importance in like healing from these other underlying issues, because it's just so ingrained, I think, to like for women to hate their bodies and for women to want to change, and the diet industry has such a hold of all of us that it makes so much sense that it would with therapists too, you know, and with dietitians. You know, a lot of folks are just sort of steeped in that world and don't see beyond it. So I think it takes like maybe some specialized training and potentially like personal experience of having had an eating disorder, having had, you know, known some people who've gone through this, that like to see how important intuitive eating is into the whole puzzle of healing from shame and learning self-compassion.
Yep. Yeah.
I've found a lot of people in my community now who do get it. So if you want any names, I can give you some off mic.
Yeah, that would be great. Because I think like even what we're doing now is just like spreading the word about this stuff. And, you know, every time that I have explained intuitive eating, you know, I get people are like nodding their head at me and like, oh, okay. Like, you know, it seems like something that people need and are desperately longing for. And so spreading the word about, you know, its existence is really important.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in your work, you work on like a lot of relationship issues with people, right?
I do. Yes.
Yeah. And do you bring intuitive eating into the mix as well when appropriate, or?
So that has not been something that has come up too often with clients. It is a concept that I bring up. I do like relationship coaching and things like that, but then I'm also a therapist and I work with patients who are going through intensive outpatient treatment. And so, you know,
like
eating,
alcoholism or for?
It's mental health.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So I lead a skills-based therapy group with women. And so eating definitely comes up, you know, a lot. And so, you know, I definitely introduced the concept of IE, and we talk a little bit more about it. I will sometimes do like mindfulness exercises and like encourage the women to eat mindfully for, you know, I'll bring in some like chocolate or mints or something mindfully. And I know like in most cases, it's just an introduction of the concept. And so that's really what I do. I express my own like very brief history, you know, not going into too many details, but I say like, this is a way that I approach food. I found it to be very helpful. I offer, you know, the book as like a resource, like, hey, this might be something you want to check out. And so it's kind of like planting the seed in that regard, because you know, just the format of what I do, you know, isn't to address food, you know, in a lot of specifics, but it's just like, you know, to say like, hey, we're trying to learn how to, you know, treat ourselves better. We're trying to learn how to be skillful in the way that we approach life. And I find that, you know, intuitive eating allows me to be skillful in the way that I approach food. So it's been great. Like anytime that like food kind of comes up, I like do what I can to talk a little bit about intuitive eating, because I have found it to be so helpful, but not only that, just so healing for me in the way that I approach myself and in my life and loving myself more. So
that's fantastic. I love that. Yeah. I've found it to be the same. It's, you know, I feel like once I started to do the work on self-compassion and loving myself more, it just became really clear that like, why did I still have this one area of my life where I wasn't practicing that? You know, like why was eating and weight and body the only place where I didn't like let myself off the hook a little bit.
Yep.
So, you know, it just sort of fit into place with all that deeper work over time. So yeah. That's awesome. Well, tell me where people can find you online and learn more about your work.
Yeah, so my website pretty much has it all. Yeah, Akirah Robinson, that's AKIRAH Robinson.com. And from there, you can learn a little bit more about me, you know, links to my Facebook page and Twitter are on there as well. And then certainly, you know, on the contact page, if you'd like to email me, you can certainly do that as well. So
fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Akirah. It's been really great talking with you.
Yes, thanks for having me. This is great.
So that's our show. Thanks again so much to our guest for being here, and thanks to you guys for listening. You can find us online at christyharrison.com/foodpsych. Follow us on Twitter at foodpsychpod, and like us on Facebook. We're at facebook.com/foodpsych. We'll be back again soon with another main episode, and you can get our bonus episodes on our Patreon page. Just go to patreon.com/foodpsych. That's patreon.com/foodpsych, and sign up at the premium levels to get our Ask Food Psych bonus episodes. The music you're hearing behind me now is by a band called AWOL, and the track is called Food, used under the Creative Commons license. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, stay psyched.
Stupid or scared, no work in the kitchen now.